This episode of Heads and Tails is recorded with Naheed Bardai, who is head of UWC Atlantic College in deepest Wales, the most extraordinary, well-kept secret that really shouldn't be. It's an innovative sixth form college where children or students I should say, from all corners of the globe are brought together in dormitories of 4. It's a deliberate melting pot where they live diversity, they understand the world not just through disciplines but through systems. We have a really fascinating conversation about teaching and learning and system transformation and the route to really motivating young people through collaboration and cooperation. It's a great episode. We hope you enjoy. Welcome back to Heads and Tails with me, Henry Faber. I'm one of the co-founders here at Oppenheimer Education, and it's a real thrill to be interviewing Naheed Bardai all the way from West Wales. How are things out there in West Wales today?
A little rainy at this moment in time, but hey, look, it's beautiful, so I'm not going to complain.
Excellent. I've got to give you a little bio before we get going. This is a fascinating conversation I've been looking forward to all summer. Naheed is currently the head of UWC Atlantic College, a post he's held since 2021, the summer of 2021. UWC Atlantic is part of the United World Colleges, a huge global educational movement, really, that aims to use education to foster peace and a sustainable future. It's made up of a network of 18, I think, international schools and colleges on 4 different continents that deliver a very challenging IB diploma program that I know we're going to hear more about. Their community is a very deliberate mix of students from diverse socioeconomic, cultural, racial, and national backgrounds. And before UWC, Naheed was the head of upper school at Upper Canada College in Toronto, where I know he's been visiting this summer, or he's been in Canada at least, and 6 years at the Aga Khan Academy, Mombasa in Kenya, serving as Dean of Students and Principal of the senior school over a 10-year period. So, Naheed holds no less than 4 degrees across education and business administration, but I'm keen to ask him about what he's doing today. We're really, really grateful to have you with us. Thank you so much. I think the best place to start is really about you before we get into the school and the college itself. I'd love to ask, maybe there's an anecdote that just expresses or gives a sense of your style of educational leadership that you're happy to kick us off with.
Yeah, sure. Happy to share. And thanks for having me on. So, I mean, what comes to mind is in my first 2 weeks at the college where I am now, we had a request about trying to have an Afghan student who was in Kabul come to the school. We were already full at that time, and the student would have to be rescued because it was the time when the Taliban had just taken over, and now foreign troops were leaving. And we managed to get the student on the last plane out. Arrived in Pakistan, sat there for 3 months, got his visa, and then came to the UK. And I went to the airport to pick him up myself, bring him back to the college, and just get to know him a little bit. And so for me, what it signals about my leadership is that one, I really care deeply about the students, and I really want to give maximum opportunity to those who can receive it. And at the same time, not afraid to take a little bit of risk and do things that are necessary and needed to help make our world a better place.
Amazing. Lovely start. Thank you so much. And I think for those who don't know, we're going to need to hear a bit about the college itself. So for me, anyway, the school has always been a little bit of a mythical kind of well-kept secret. I didn't know a lot about it before speaking to you earlier in the summer. You were on your way to a Kendrick Lamar concert at that point in time. So you had exciting things coming ahead. And the school, I guess, it has this amazing diversity, as we've mentioned. You know, you've had royals, literal royal families who've been students at the school, and students like the one you've just mentioned to me. What's in the secret sauce and the DNA of the place that makes it so special?
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination of things. It's really about the location. Stunning place on the coast of Wales on the Bristol Channel with an 11th century castle, 125 acres of forest and farm, and just an incredible place for a young person to be. That's number one. Number two, innovation is very much in the DNA of the school. The Times said in 1962, upon the founding of the school, that it was the most radical experiment in education, and that holds true today. Invented the rib. For those who are seagoing, you'll know what the rib boat is. That was invented here at the college, and it's the most widely used boat for inshore rescue in the world. Helped to invent the IB in the late 60s and early 70s as well, and continues to innovate today. So that innovation, the DNA, is also part of the secret sauce. And the last bit I would say is that it's really the deliberate diversity of our community is what makes this place so special. Students from right now from 84 different countries, but crossing socioeconomic barriers and boundaries unlike any other place that I've ever been to. You have students who are genuinely in the bottom 10% of socioeconomic status in the world, and you have students who are, kids of billionaires or from royalty, and all of that mix coming together is what makes this place really just so, so incredible.
It must be a challenge in itself to manage that diversity because while it all sounds wonderful, it can't always be easy. Has that been something you have got to professionally over time? Was that always sort of something that sat easily with you? How do you take on that challenge of molding and melting all these kids together?
Yeah, and I think you've named it really well because diversity in of itself, if it's left to its own devices, doesn't necessarily channel to the positive, right? It can very easily channel into fear or bias that comes out in different kinds of ways and those sorts of things. But when harnessed well, it's that diversity that makes this place so special. And so we do that in a lot of really, really interesting ways, And so at the very base unit of your experience here, you're in a house. And in the house, you're in a room of four. And there's no other option. Everybody stays in a room of four, and we're a sixth form college. That's not normal in most boarding schools in the UK. And we do that because we want you to live with people who are different from you. So in every room, as much as we can, you will have four different people from four different parts of the world and even speaking four different languages together in the same room. And so you learn how to live that diversity where you come to see that actually what unites us is far greater than what divides us, and you come to see a human rather than an other. And that I think is so important in what we do here. And of course, there are ups and downs and challenges for sure. But I think we get it done really well. And a lot of it comes down to the open-mindedness of our students, but also the tremendous staff that we have here.
It's always been a sixth form. Has there ever been a thought about taking that down in age groups? Is it a very deliberate thing to stick with those top two final years of school?
Yeah, we had a small flirting with having a year 10 for, I think it was maybe 4 or 5 years. We had a year 10 program, but then that wound down as well. So really, for the most part of our history, we've been sixth form only, and for the foreseeable future as well.
Excellent. And I'm keen to ask you about the IB. Well, I don't have conversations about the IB on this podcast enough. I'm personally a big fan of it without really understanding it fully, without having experience of it myself. I had sisters who kind of diverted towards A levels or IB, and there were four of them. So we've got lots of case studies and testimonials of each. I would love to hear your take on why the IB and what is it in the DNA of that that's a good thing for a child.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that the IB is probably the most rigorous and progressive, globally minded pre-university qualification that exists. So that in of itself makes it really special. And some of the guts of that is that, students take a broad range of subjects. They must do 6 subjects for the 2 years. So that gives you a real breadth of understanding our world in complex ways. And students must do a range of subject areas. So they must do a first language, a second language, which is brilliant, right? They must do a humanities or an individual in societies, as we call it. They must do a science, they must do a math, and then they have an elective, which can be an art or something from one of those other subject areas. And so that breadth of offering really gives a young person broad exposure, broad understanding of how the world works. It doesn't force them into narrowing their domain of expertise early. Within that, there is something called the core. And the core is really actually what makes the whole thing come together. It's comprised of a mandatory co-curricular program called CAS, where service is one of the major focuses, and at least for us as a college, is a major focus. It's also comprised of an extended essay, which is a 4,000-word primary research paper, university level paper that every student has to write. And so that is a differentiator when it comes to university preparation and preparedness for an academic kind of, future of study. And the final piece is something called theory of knowledge. So essentially, it's an applied philosophy course where the young person is at the center, and it asks students to question, how do they know what they know? What does evidence look like, and how does it differ in different subject areas? What's the nature of truth? And we know that in today's time, when we have all of the onslaught of misinformation coming our way and the amounts that young people have to sort through about the different stimulus and knowledge that comes to them, these kinds of questions are absolutely integral as we think about the future of learning for young people. And so that way the IB is already, 10 steps ahead of what most other students, get to experience.
Mm. Thank you. That's a fascinating start. I'd love to kind of ask you something on that university pathway before we move on to more about the college itself. Parents from around the world come to you, just as parents from around the world are engaging with my organization for mentorship for their kids, and they have very different perspectives on university and what that university experience will offer. And in the UK, at least, where you're based with this school, even if it's got international eyesight, as it were, the university system here in this country is quite unusual in the sense that we're often encouraged to go and study English or languages when we might want to go down a route of working in finance or law. And that often doesn't make sense to other parts of the world where they say, my own stepfather is American. He said to me, "Why do you want to study Spanish? You're going to be a teacher?" And that mindset is different. And then the IB kind of plays to both of those somehow. So I'd love to hear your reflections on that and what makes a really solid foundations for a teenager ahead of a university degree.
Yeah, so I think having the ability to focus on something that you enjoy, but also doing something that is just good for you to understand as a human being. Because at least for us, and this I think it comes down to in many ways what our theories of change are, right? And for us, at the college here, our theory of change is that we're not just educating young people to be successful in the next stage of their life. We are educating them so that they are human beings who have a much broader view of the world and their responsibility in it, well beyond university. So for us, success really can be measured when they're, in their 40s and 50s. And in that way, we think about what they do here and what they do in an IB education. And so that well-roundedness of having broad exposure to multiple domains of knowledge and understanding eventually lead to a human being who is more well-rounded, who understands the world in a more complex way without denying them the opportunity to focus on something. So, for example, if they want to be an engineer, they can absolutely take chemistry, physics, and a higher level math and be able to do that, but complement that with some literature, maybe picking up a bit of Spanish, and maybe doing some film. Those things are sort of possible in different combinations, and that's what makes it, I think, really special and important, and why I would advocate for an IB education, anytime.
Broad and co-curricular is great. I want to ask you about your systems transformation pathway. I know it's quite a unique facet or a unique element to the college and what it offers. Perhaps you can tell us a little bit about that. Just give us a little flavor of what that means.
Yeah, and so it represents the biggest change in an IB diploma education in the last 50 years. So, in short, what we've done is taken two courses away from the IB diploma. This is obviously with the IB as a partner, and we've inserted this course called the Systems Transformation Pathway. And what it's really about is helping young people to have a schema in their mind of how to understand the world in a different way. Right now, we expect students to understand the world through disciplines. And disciplines is a really crude and probably pretty terrible way to understand the world. We actually know that no global challenge that we face falls under disciplinary lines, right? Every challenge that we face as a world is somehow interconnected, is somehow systems driven. So the systems transformation pathway tries to give young people a mental model in their mind of the world through systems, which is not perfect, but it's better because you see the complexity, you see the interdependencies that are there. And where that has come from is a fundamental belief that actually we are um, um, not serving our students really well when it comes to their education. If you imagine our graduates who just finished school this last May, they will be in their mid 50s in 2060. And so we think of our job as to prepare young people for the world of 2060. And in that frame, I ask myself, are we actually giving the kind of education they need to manage the complexity and difficulties, potential difficulties of the world of 2060? And so the idea of a systems-based education to complement a disciplinary one, they do 4 disciplinary courses and then the systems-based kind of part of that education is going to help them to better equip them for that world, equipping them in that kind of way. So that in a very small nutshell is what we're doing.
Can I ask for one anecdote or kind of example of what I would be doing on day one in an STP, if we can call it that?
Yeah, well, that's our short forms. That's great.
There
Well,
you
look,
go.
in the first 100 hours, they learn about systems and systems design and how do you design, how do you redesign systems. And literally on the first day of class, they talk about how we want to orient ourselves together. How do we want to be a learning community? Because what we know is that the global challenges that our world faces are not going to be solved through competition alone. Right? We're not going to compete our way out of future pandemics. We're not going to compete our way out of the climate crisis. We're not going to compete our way to global peace. All those things require deep cooperation, deep solidarity, deep collaboration. But our education systems are fundamentally based on competition as a model. We deeply believe that competition is the best way to motivate human beings to do things. But that's misfit with the world of 2020, 2030, 2040, 2050, right? So we design differently. So the first class is literally how do we come together as a community and how do we learn to live and work together, not in competition with one another, but together and build off of the skills and strengths that each other have. So that's kind of class one.
Love that. So exciting. I mean, God, people always talk about how they're going to foster, collaboration, cooperation. This is a really deliberate kind of didactic way of doing that. And I would imagine you get the buy-in of the teachers immediately to be involved in and delivering something like this, and by proxy, the students too. I would hope that it would be the bit that is almost most motivating for the students. Is that fair?
Yeah, definitely. And for teachers, it's not an easy course to teach because it's about systems, and most teachers don't learn about a systems thinking or systems design kind of education. So that's been a challenge, but we had many incredible teachers step up and deliver it really well. And we've got 4 teachers in the classroom, for example, because not any one teacher will understand the panacea of all that we have to deal with.
Sounds complex for scheduling.
Yeah.
Don't envy on that. I'm sure under the glamour of all of this, there are some real eccentric difficulties for the kind of nuts and bolts of it all. Must be complex. Incredible. So I want to ask you, I guess, for some advice for other educators. You have worked in different countries, different systems. You have a very international experience body that many teachers or senior leaders in education would be grateful to have. Perhaps there's one piece of advice you could share that stood you well over time that you would always share with others who are interested in the sector.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it's such an important role that that a person can play to be an educator to young people now and especially into the future. So the one bit of advice I'd say is be courageous. Don't be afraid to step into what is can be a challenging role, can be a politicized role nowadays, especially to have courage and to step into it because we need courageous, thoughtful, caring adults to help to guide our young people in what is probably the most difficult time to be a young person in modern history, with all that is coming at young people. And we need more people to step up into those roles. So please be courageous and please do it and seek the support of people like me or others who are willing to be there to help.
And what a time to need to be courageous, because it's never really been harder for schools. I thought it was just something unique to UK systems, both public and private sector. VAT, lack in government funding, whatever it might be. But traveling, the more I do, it feels like it's a difficulty financially in the world we live in for a lot of schools in different countries. And that's probably making financial aid much harder. You as an organization, your whole mantra is based around your ability to support diversity and socioeconomic differences through financial aid. So how will schools who are struggling to make ends meet continue to give the financial aid support that they have done traditionally?
Yeah, that's a really hard one, and no doubt the last year has been a really trying year for independent schools in the UK. Difficult time, but it's great to see the innovation and the way in which schools have been resilient and have fought through it. On our end, you're right, the socioeconomic diversity is a cornerstone. We rely heavily on our very generous community to help us to fundraise and to be able to fund those scholarships and bursaries. And we also rely a lot on our operating budget to do so. So where the pinch is really coming is on the operating budget side, which is where we have to make really choices now about some of the added fixed costs that we've had over the last year come at us in addition to the VAT, which is putting strain on our families and us as well. And so we are working hard to really try to continue going back to our community who have really stepped up in so many ways to give financially to allow us to continue to have students come here. We're not willing to compromise that socioeconomic diversity now and encourage schools to do the same, to be creative, to tap into their communities, to invest in their philanthropy teams, to be able to raise more in those ways, and to save money where they can as well. We rely as well on expanding our kind of auxiliary kind of revenue that we'll do in the summertime and rental facilities and camps and those kinds of things also. So tough time, but we know that having diverse, inclusive communities is necessary for our independent schools as we go forward.
So what I hear from you is buckle up. It might be tough, but we'll get through it. where do you see things going 5, 10 years down the line from now when you'll probably be sitting from a vantage point somewhere else?
Well, it's a responsibility that we have to the talented young people of this country and beyond, to be able to offer them the kind of spectacular education, wonderful education that our schools in the UK are able to offer. I believe it's a moral obligation that we have.
Amazing. I think we've got time for a couple more questions. I want to ask you about an unpopular or controversial opinion. Is there something you're happy to stand on the soapbox and just shout from the rooftops?
I think that our education system is too student centered. Um, I think that we need to augment that, supplement that with a more planetary, worldly frame of reference. Understanding that actually, as any one individual human being, we are insignificant in the course of time and space. Um, and to come to that realization in some ways is humbling for us, that I actually mean nothing in the big scale of things. And that if I understood more deeply how we are in deep interconnection with other human beings around the world, with ecosystems around the world, with other living species around the world, I think we'll be in a much better place as human societies if we deeply understand that, and our education systems can help to orient young people in that direction.
Say no more. I'm leaving you there. Last but not least, you have an in tray with a huge amount going on in it, no doubt. Perhaps there's something you'd like to finish this recording by talking about that's getting you really excited, but challenging you also in the months to come.
So we want to take our systems transformation pathway work one step forward. We want to create something called the Center for Systems Transformation, where we become the preeminent space in the world to teach young people about systems. And as part of that, we want to have a teacher training institute, because we know that teacher preparation is going to be key to helping to expand this kind of education. It's great right now that there's 3 other schools in the world who are already doing the systems transformation pathway, who 2 have just launched this literally last week, and one that launched last year. So we already have other schools taking it on. To allow more, we need to prepare teachers well. We want to do some open source curriculum as part of that, make it as free and available to anybody who would like to have it as possible. And we want to do some research on it as well. So that's some of the bigger and bolder ambitions that we have for the next year. And that's what's keeping me excited about some of the work that we do here.
A lot of innovation, exciting. I think it's been a real thrill to speak to you. It's a very different school, this, with a different DNA to it altogether. And I think many more parents and many more teachers out there should know about the kind of work you're doing and should get on a train and visit you in deep, dark Wales and enjoy some of those oak beamed ceilings that I can see out behind you. Naheed, thank you so much for sharing so much of your time at a really busy point in the school year. And it's been hugely exciting to get to know you recently, and I'm excited to see where next for you and for the school too.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.